The United States launched an operation today to seize a Russian-flagged oil tanker in the Atlantic following a weeks-long pursuit. A second tanker was seized in the Caribbean. What will become of Chevron in Venezuela? It's the only major U.S. company still operating in the country. Does it stand to benefit from President Trump's desire to rebuild Venezuela's oil sector? We talked to an energy industry veteran. An ICE agent fatally shoots a woman in Minneapolis. The Department of Homeland Security says she attempted to run over law enforcement with her vehicle. A massive fraud scheme took center stage on Capitol Hill today. Lawmakers held their first public hearing with a witness alleging retaliation against whistleblowers.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The White House confirming the seizure of 2 sanctioned oil tankers. This comes as President Trump announces that Venezuela's interim authorities will turn over up to 50 million barrels of sanctioned oil to the U.S. He says it will then be sold at market price. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Osu at the North Lawn of the White House. Mari, good afternoon. What is the latest from the briefing?
Don, good afternoon. Yes, all eyes are still on Venezuela as the White House today confirms the seizure of 2 more sanctioned oil tankers. Press Secretary Leavitt today saying that the Department of War, in conjunction with the Department of Homeland Security under Operation Southern Spear, seized what she calls a stateless sanctioned dark fleet motor tanker that was conducting illicit activities in the Caribbean Sea. The other tanker, called Bella 1, was seized in the North Atlantic, with the British military expressing support of the seizures, saying, quote, that it was part of a Russian-Iranian axis of sanctions evasions that was causing terrorism, conflict, and misery from the Middle East to Ukraine. And meanwhile, the White House is saying that the Trump administration, led by Secretary Rubio, is in close correspondence with the interim authorities in Venezuela, adding that those interim authorities agreed to let the U.S. seize that oil. This comes as President Trump announced Tuesday night that Venezuela will be releasing 30 to 50 million barrels of sanctioned oil to the U.S., where it will be sold at market price. The White House says that Energy Secretary Chris Wright is currently in Florida today talking to oil executives, and that conversation will continue back at the White House later this week. Leavitt says that the U.S. has already begun marketing that Venezuelan oil and that the U.S. is selectively rolling back sanctions in order to do that so that it can transport and sell Venezuelan crude oil and oil products to global markets. All proceeds from the sale of that oil, Leavitt says, will first settle in U.S.-controlled accounts here, and then those funds will then be dispersed for what she calls the benefit of both the American people and the Venezuelan people. And here's the White House today announcing that the crew of Bella 1, that Russian-flagged oil tanker, may be subject to prosecution. Take a look.
The vessel this morning was seized in the North Atlantic pursuant to a warrant issued by a U.S. federal court after being tracked. And this was a Venezuelan shadow fleet vessel that has transported sanctioned oil. And the United States of America, under this president, is not going to tolerate that. I would also just add the vessel had a judicial seizure order in the crew. So that means the crew is now subject to prosecution for any applicable violation of federal law, and they will be brought to the United States for such prosecution if necessary.
Meanwhile, as the effects of the capture of former Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro are felt around the world, President Trump today, earlier this morning, posting to Truth Social, saying that Russia and China have, quote, zero fear of NATO without the U.S., and that the only nation that China and Russia fear is the United States, the vision of America that he is rebuilding. This comes as the Trump administration doubles down in the wake of Operation Absolute Resolve on all Western countries that they say are aligning with U.S. adversaries. President Trump saying that the U.S. needs to acquire Greenland from a national security standpoint, and the White House confirming that the U.S. is currently talking about that acquisition and what a potential purchase of Greenland might look like, with the first option being diplomacy. The White House saying this about the president's motives in that Greenland acquisition. Take a look.
More control over the Arctic region and ensuring that China and Russia and our adversaries cannot continue their aggression in this very important and strategic region. And there would be many other benefits as well that, again, the president and his national security team are currently talking about.
Why does the president feel he needs to own Greenland and not and put out the threat of military action when this could be done through diplomacy?
Well, who said diplomacy isn't taking place behind the scenes, Dasha? I mean, the president is interested in diplomacy. His national security team is as well. And of course, he's always willing to pick up the phone for everybody and hear out their concerns. But the president is the president of the United States of America, and he's always going to be very clear about what he views as being in our nation's best interest.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that he plans to meet Danish officials, his Danish counterparts, next week to talk about the United States' interest in Greenland. Don, back to you.
Okay, Mari, thank you. House Speaker Mike Johnson this morning told reporters that he doesn't expect use of force of the military in Greenland. Here's the speaker.
I don't think anybody's talking about using military force in Greenland. They're looking at diplomatic channels and all.
The White House said they're keeping military options there open.
The U.S. always has military options for everything. I think it's a general statement. I think with Greenland, it's very clear that we are working on their diplomatic channels. My own governor of my state, Louisiana, has been appointed to that for that role, an emissary, and we expect a productive outcome of that.
I think it's not against Greenland's interests. There's a lot of thoughtful discussion to be had there, and that's what we expect is going to happen. So all this stuff about military action and all that, I don't think it's I don't even think that's a possibility. I don't think anybody's seriously considering that, and in the Congress, we're certainly not.
Why is President Donald Trump pushing to take control of Greenland? Let's take a look.
President Donald Trump reasserted in the new year that the United States wants Greenland.
We need Greenland from a national security situation.
Trump said a newly appointed special envoy would lead the charge, drawing sharp criticism from Denmark and Greenland. Let's take a look at why Trump is interested in the vast Arctic territory. Greenland is strategically significant for the U.S. military. The shortest route from Europe to North America runs through it. The U.S. has said it wants to expand its existing military presence on the island. That includes placing radars to watch waters in the region used by Russian Navy vessels and nuclear submarines.
Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place.
Shipping data show most Chinese and Russian activity in the Arctic is in waters near Russia. But more broadly, the Arctic is becoming more militarized, with NATO states, China and Russia all expanding activity there. The island is also rich in minerals, oil and natural gas, though development has been slow and mining has seen very limited U.S. investment. Legally, Greenland is a territory of Denmark, which is a NATO member. In 2009, it was granted broad self-governing autonomy. That includes the right to declare independence from Denmark through a referendum. Polls show most of Greenland's 57,000 inhabitants back independence. But many of them also fear a hasty move for independence could leave them worse off and expose the island to the U.S. The U.S. military has a permanent presence in an airbase in northwest Greenland. In 1951, the U.S. and Denmark made an agreement. It gave the U.S. the right to move around freely and construct military bases on the island as long as Denmark and Greenland are notified. Trump offered to buy the island during his first presidential term, a move Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen called absurd. In late 2025, Trump named a special envoy to Greenland, Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry, who publicly backs the idea of the island becoming part of the U.S. Frederiksen has since said Denmark wants to continue being a good ally of the U.S., while also saying that Trump's threats should be taken seriously. In a joint statement pushing back on Trump, she and Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen said Greenland belongs to Greenlanders, saying, quote, "You cannot annex another country, not even with an argument about international security."
The United States seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker that was being shadowed by a Russian submarine today. After a more than 2-week-long pursuit across the Atlantic as part of a U.S. blockade of Venezuelan oil exports. Here's more.
Maritime tracking software shows the location of a Venezuela-linked oil tanker that the U.S. government on Wednesday said it had seized after a weeks-long pursuit through the Atlantic Ocean. The Russian-flagged tanker, originally known as the Bella 1, slipped through a U.S. maritime blockade of vessels moving out of Venezuela and rebuffed an early U.S. Coast Guard attempt to board it. In a post on X, the U.S. military's European command said the Trump administration had seized the vessel for violating U.S. sanctions. This appeared to be the first time in recent memory that the U.S. military has nabbed a Russian-flagged vessel. U.S. officials said that Russian military vessels were in the general vicinity of the operation, including a Russian submarine. It was unclear how close the vessels were to the operation, which took place close to Iceland. Russian state media quoted the country's foreign ministry that the tanker was in international waters and acting according to international maritime law. It has called on Western countries to respect the vessel's right to freedom of navigation. The U.S. Coast Guard first attempted to intercept the vessel last month, but it refused to be boarded. Since then, it has registered under a Russian flag. The tanker, now known as the Marinera, is the latest tanker targeted by the U.S. Coast Guard since the start of U.S. President Donald Trump's pressure campaign against Venezuela.
In a separate operation, the U.S. Southern Command said it captured a second Venezuela-linked tanker in the Caribbean Sea. In a social media post, Southern Command said the Department of War, in coordination with the Department of Homeland Security, apprehended a stateless, sanctioned dark fleet motor tanker without incident. The vessel is known as the Sophia. Southern Command said it was operating in international waters and conducting illicit activities. The U.S. Coast Guard is escorting the ship to the U.S. And President Trump announced yesterday the U.S. will soon receive 30 to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil in the near future. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that, plus a look at how Chinese defense systems in Venezuela failed to impress.
President Trump wrote on Truth Social that the oil the U.S. receives from Venezuela will be sold at market price and that money will be controlled by him as President of the United States. Trump says he will ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States. The transfer could be worth nearly $3 billion, with oil trading at roughly $56 a barrel. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum discusses utilizing oil from Venezuela, speaking on Fox News.
You need to dilute that heavy crude with a lighter product. And of course, we have an excess of that lighter product here because the shale oils that come out of the shale revolution in America are perfect for blending. It's great news for jobs. It's great news for gas prices going forward. It's great news for America, and it's great news for Venezuela.
Burgum says Venezuela has an opportunity now to have capital come in and rebuild their economy.
They have larger oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, one of the richest countries in the world. Venezuela, one of the poorest countries in the world.
Ambassador to the UN, Michael Waltz, pushed back on UN criticism of the Maduro operation, speaking on Fox News.
I don't know why they're so upset. As I pointed out at the Security Council, over 50 countries didn't even recognize Maduro because he stole the election. So it's hard to figure out what they're so upset about. Well, I think we know the answer. It's because it's President Trump, and he's a man of action and took real action.
Waltz says the Venezuelan people are going to be better off.
And look, at the end of the day, this was the right thing to do. President Trump took bold action and will continue to swing and doge that ridiculous organization called the United Nations.
The lightning operation to capture Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, punched in and out of Caracas before its air defenses could mount an effective response. The raid raised uncomfortable questions for China about the limits of the Chinese-supplied systems that Venezuela has leaned on, especially anti-stealth radar that China advertised as capable of spotting and stopping U.S. stealth aircraft. Analyst Yu Tsung-chi, a retired major general from Taiwan, says the operation suggested deeper weaknesses, corruption in China's defense industry, and a lack of reliability of the technology and command structure meant to tie those systems together. Yu described it as a system built to look modern on paper and intimidating in propaganda, but falls apart under the demands of real combat. Yu says neither Chinese or Russian air defense systems made the slightest bit of difference once the U.S. brought real-time intelligence, electronic warfare, and precision weapons to bear. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The U.S. announced it seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker in the Atlantic Ocean linked to Venezuelan oil shipments. Joining us to discuss is Bart Marcoy, foreign policy analyst, former career diplomat and Energy Department official, and news commentator creating daily bite-sized news analysis under A Minute with Bart. Okay, Bart, good afternoon. So it looks like this is the first time in recent history that the U.S. military has seized a Russian-flagged vehicle like this. Do you think this signifies a more assertive posture than before in terms of U.S. enforcement of sanctioned oil?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very muscular move by the Trump administration. And I'd like to point out that that so-called Russian-flagged vessel has only been Russian-flagged for about a week and a half. When it was first attempted to be boarded by the Coast Guard, it was a stateless vessel with a false flag, and it had violated maritime law by doing that. It ran away, and while it was running away from the Coast Guard, the crew hastily painted a Russian flag on the side, and then they registered the vessel, changed its name from Bella 1 to Marinara, and registered it in Russia. So calling it a Russian flagged vessel, yes, technically that's true, but it did that while it was being pursued by the United States Coast Guard.
So does this also show that the U.S. is enforcing sanctions globally? Because this was in the Atlantic Ocean, not just near Venezuela.
It's what they said they would do. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said, we're going to enforce these sanctions anywhere in the world. We are serious about Venezuela. The Trump administration has told Venezuela to kick Russia, China, and Iran and Cuba out of there. And he's making it clear that he's not going to back down. This was a real face down of Vladimir Putin. The Russians, once they agreed to flag the vessel, they sent a Navy ship, a Russian warship, and a submarine to escort the Bella, the Marinara. And so we countered by sending AC-130 gunships, the Army Special Forces Night Stalkers group, Poseidon sub-hunters, and what am I missing? And a couple of F-35s to support the operation. Trump is telling Putin, I'm taking this tanker back down, and Putin backed down.
Okay, you said earlier that the flag was only up for about a week. I still wonder, does this carry political and diplomatic weight, seizing a vessel from a major country? Does it introduce a new variable in the U.S.-Russia relationship or increase tensions?
Yes, of course it does. And it's Trump saying to Putin, I gave you every chance. I worked with you. I tried to come to peace terms with you over Ukraine. I tried to settle things with you, but you are not my partner in peace, and I am representing American interests, and American interests dictate that you stay out of Venezuela. That's what he's saying.
Okay, so I want to ask you, how is strict enforcement of sanctioned oil going to impact Venezuela compared to before, where the sanctions were in place but not enforced to this level?
Well, ironically, it's going to be the best thing in the world for the Venezuelan people, because the illegitimate Venezuelan government that has been in power for so many years has been systematically looting the country, and they've been neglecting the oil fields. Oil fields have to be tended, they have to be maintained, and they've let them lapse to, I've seen estimates as low as 4 or 5% of their production capacity. The Trump administration is saying, we are enforcing the sanctions, we are going to take that oil, we're going to sell it, and we're going to give the proceeds of the oil sales to the Venezuelan people and to the American companies that had their oil field assets stolen from them decades ago. The Venezuelan people are going to see a much greater benefit now that the sanctions are being enforced rigorously.
Okay, so let me follow up on that, because I'm thinking about China right now. It's been a customer of Venezuelan oil. So, I mean, do you think Beijing could be worried right now about essentially losing a major long-term energy supplier? And what is the significance or impact of this?
Yeah, they are definitely worried about losing the supplier, because they've been buying their oil from Venezuela. The oil they're buying from Venezuela, they've been paying a steeply discounted price for, because it's under sanction. Venezuela can't sell it on the world market. It can only sell it to China or to India. And China has been buying it for, I don't know how much, probably 30% of its market value. And now they have to pay full price. President Trump said in his original press conference, yeah, we'll keep selling it to China. We're going to be in the oil selling business, but they're going to pay world market prices for it. And frankly, you're looking at a possibility of something similar happening in Iran if you pay attention to the street protests there. And so it's not just the economic effect. This is a face down of Xi Jinping as well as of Vladimir Putin. Xi Jinping is looking at the prospect of being the greatest failure as a leader in Chinese history if he cannot adapt to the new circumstances. And all the people like Lee Jae-myung in South Korea who've hitched their wagon to the star of China and of Xi Jinping have got to be looking and saying, wait a minute, maybe we should be a little bit more conciliatory to the United States and distance ourselves from China. Everybody in the world is going to start distancing themselves from China now because Chinese power is suddenly weakened.
Okay, that is a good point. You're saying this is not just about the economic impact. You said that this is a failure on Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping's part. So what does this do exactly to China's Western Hemisphere strategy?
I think that China realizes that Trump's enforcement of the Monroe Doctrine is serious, and their Belt and Road and string of pearls strategies stops at the Western Hemisphere. They are not welcome in the Western Hemisphere, and they're going to be systematically pushed out. And that affects Chinese prestige all around the world. Every leader is suddenly recalculating their commitment to China.
Okay, just final question. What does this do in terms of how does it affect the politics within China with Xi Jinping as the leader?
You know, that's such an opaque world to me, but I have to make an educated guess that there are factions within the Chinese Communist Party and Chinese power structures that are looking at Xi Jinping, and there've got to be guys sitting there thinking, now might be my chance to take him down. He might be weak. He might be vulnerable. I don't know this, but I suspect that there are people hatching plots right now trying to decide whether they're going to roll the dice and push him out of power.
Okay, well, Bart, great insight as always. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
An ICE agent fatally shoots a woman in Minneapolis. The Department of Homeland Security says she attempted to run over law enforcement with her vehicle. More news after this break.
I had a pretty normal mom life. Everything was pretty good, and it was a very happy life.
And we just had a new baby. And then all of a sudden, within a day or two, she's on life support and fighting for her life.
And I knew something was pretty wrong. A little less than a week after I came home, I couldn't breathe. That's when we decided to go to the hospital. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
This could not happen without monthly donations from friends like you. Your sustained support helps fund life-saving research that leads to medical breakthroughs, like those that gave Jen a second chance at life. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America, and we urgently need your help to save lives. Go to helpheart.org or call now to become a monthly donor today. Your donation of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, will make a difference through prevention, early detection, treatments, and cures that help save lives.
I am very thankful for the American Heart Association. I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children.
Please go to helpheart.org or call now with your donation of just $19 a month. Join our community of monthly donors, and you'll get this limited edition t-shirt you can wear to show you're helping save lives.
One simple act today can save your life or the life of a loved one.
So please, call or go to helpheart.org now to help save lives.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality, a timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure, natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
An immigration and customs enforcement agent fatally shot a woman today in Minneapolis. Homeland Security spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin said she was killed after attempting to run over law enforcement officers with her vehicle. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey said he was aware of the shooting. Frey appeared to blame the officers, posting on X, quote, "The presence of federal immigration enforcement agents is causing chaos in our city. We're demanding ICE to leave the city immediately." The mayor added, quote, "We stand rock solid with our immigrant and refugee communities." McLaughlin took to X as well, claiming that the shooting was the result of, quote, "constant attacks and demonization of immigration officers." McLaughlin added that leaders in so-called sanctuary cities, quote, "fuel and encourage rampant assaults on our law enforcement." The State Department has expanded its list of nations whose citizens will be subject to visa bans of up to $15,000 to enter the United States. It has added 25 more nations. The latest additions will bring the total to 38. The newly added countries include Algeria, Cuba, Nepal, Nigeria, Venezuela, and others. B1 and B2 visas are used for short-term business and tourism travel. Citizens of those nations who are eligible are required to post a bond ranging from $5,000 to $15,000, with the amount being determined during the visa interview. The list of nations stems from a 12-month visa bond pilot program the department launched in August last year. It targeted countries with high visa overstay rates, insufficient screening and vetting, or those that offer citizenship to individuals via investment. A multi-billion-dollar fraud scheme in the spotlight today on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers held the first hearing today, with one witness testifying that government officials retaliated against people who tried to report the fraud. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the takeaways.
House lawmakers on the Oversight Committee are exposing a multi-billion-dollar fraud scheme taking place in Minnesota. Around $9 billion meant to support Minnesota programs may have been stolen since 2018, a federal prosecutor reported last month. House Republicans on the committee this morning criticized Minnesota officials for not acting quickly enough to stop it.
Governor Tim Walz, Attorney General Keith Ellison, and Minnesota's Democrat leadership have either been asleep at the wheel or complicit in these crimes.
The Childcare fraud scheme was first exposed more than a decade ago, between 2011 and 2013. But one state lawmaker who appeared as a witness today said that those who tried to initially report the fraud faced government retaliation.
They revealed that retaliation now includes threats of being fired with cause, which means you do not get unemployment insurance in the state of Minnesota, being blacklisted from all state agencies.
The Democrats' witness, a former DOJ official, pushed back on the idea that fraudsters haven't faced repercussions, highlighting the consequences that some have faced so far.
The department has charged over a dozen people for stealing $14 million from a program meant for children with autism.
The state's governor, Tim Walz, has repeatedly defended his handling of the fraud crisis. But since the crisis has been exposed on the national scale, Walz has since dropped his re-election campaign for a third term. Some Republicans aim to expose that some of the stolen money was used to fund Democrat politicians, even the state's attorney general.
Did money flow to Mr. Ellison's campaign a couple weeks later from some of the folks who were in that meeting?
Sure did.
How much, do we know how much that was?
I do not have that number.
So it wasn't just overlooking the fraud. They were actively trying to make sure this program continued, and then they benefited from that politically with contributions to their campaign, all in this same year, all in 2021.
Many people involved in stealing these federal dollars are of Somali descent. Republicans are urging the Trump administration to deport and denaturalize these alleged criminals, while Democrats are urging the public not to demonize an entire group of people based on the actions of a few.
We don't need to make these partisan hearings. Every American has a stake in making sure that they have a receipt for where their tax dollars are going.
Minnesota isn't the only state under the microscope. The Trump administration has also opened an investigation into California and halted $10 billion in funding for social service programs in 5 Democratic states.
I think it is very widespread. We're just scraping the surface right now.
Today's hearing was the first of multiple fraud-related hearings. Chairman Comer has called on Governor Walz to testify in February. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
The Trump administration announced a new slate of dietary guidelines today. It recommends Americans eat more protein and less sugar than previously advised, and that consumers avoid highly processed foods to achieve a healthy diet. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt briefed reporters earlier. She was joined by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins. Take a listen.
These new guidelines are informed by the best and most reliable research on health and nutrition, particularly as it relates to the role of our diets in the prevalence of chronic disease in the country. They are also These guidelines are easy to read and understand, so every American, young and old, can access this information that literally has the power to change lives. But these are not just an updated guideline. These are the foundation to all federal food programs in our country.
Eat real food. This is the main message of the new Dietary Guidelines for Americans 2025 to 2030, which encourage households and schools to prioritize whole, nutrient-dense foods. That means more protein, more dairy, more healthy fats, more whole grains, more fruits and vegetables, whether they are fresh, frozen, canned, or dried. We are finally putting real food back at the center of the American diet. Real food that nourishes the body, restores health, fuels energy, and builds strength.
The guidelines are the latest step in the Trump administration's Make America Healthy Again agenda. Kennedy and Rollins had promised to simplify the guidelines. They also pledged to remove what they called undue influence from food companies. The guidelines are issued every 5 years. They're published by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Agriculture. The new version includes changes promised by Kennedy. It strongly discourages eating highly processed foods and warns against added sugar. Kennedy has linked high sugar and processed food consumption to chronic disease in the U.S. Other recommendations remain unchanged. These include prioritizing fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. They also keep the cap on saturated fat at 10% of daily calories. Texas agriculture officials are again warning residents about unsolicited seed packages mailed from China. The Texas Department of Agriculture says more than 1,100 mystery seed packages have been collected since February last year, sent to over 100 locations nationwide. The most recent package was uncovered on December 29th. Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller said the seeds posed a potential threat to crops, ecosystems, and the food supply. Officials say similar mailings have been reported in several other states, making it a nationwide concern. Investigators say the seeds are sacred lotus, an invasive aquatic plant when introduced outside its native range. Texans who receive suspicious packages are urged not to open, plant, or throw them away and contact the Texas Department of Agriculture for proper handling instructions. To discuss the future of the Venezuelan oil industry, joining us is energy policy analyst and advisor David Blackman. He's also a senior contributor for Forbes. David, good afternoon. So President Trump has indicated a desire to rebuild Venezuela's oil sector, to bring U.S. oil companies in to get the oil flowing again, to use his words. So looking at some data points, Venezuela was producing over 3 million barrels of oil daily. Now it's at about just shy of 1 million barrels under the socialist regime. So, David, I want to ask you, after the U.S. is done, how much oil do you estimate the country will be able to produce a day?
Well, it's a matter of timing and investment. It's going to require quite a lot of investment, tens of billions of dollars, to revitalize that industry. A lot of the infrastructure is dilapidated and out of date. Will have to be restored to fully operational process. And, you're talking about several years before you can really have a major impact. Typically in a new development, you'd be looking at 5 to 7 years before you ever produced any additional oil. This is not a new development, though. The fields in Venezuela are mature basins. They've all been produced for decades. And so this is a matter of fixing and revitalizing existing infrastructure. So within, say, 2 years, you could conceivably add several 100,000 barrels of oil per day additional to what already is being produced onto the market. To get it back over 3 million a day is probably a 5 to 7 year process involving billions, tens of billions of dollars in new investment.
Okay, I want to ask you about how energy companies feel about going back to Venezuela. But first, could you just talk to us about how did this dramatic decrease in oil production happen?
Well, in 2007, Hugo Chavez was the predecessor to Nicolas Maduro as the president of Venezuela. He was a socialist who was first elected in the late 1990s to lead the country. And as part of his socialist revolution in 2007, he came in and offered revised lease terms to the U.S. and other international companies who were operating there. Previously, before that, companies like ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, Chevron were the operators of these fields with majority interests in those fields. And the National Oil Company, which is called PDVSA, owned a minority non-operating interest, typically around 40%. So it was about a 60-40 split. Just as on a typical agreement. The Chavez government came in and said, look, you're going to have to settle for minority stakes in these fields now, and PDVSA is going to become the operator. Chevron decided, okay, we'll take that risk. We'll try to stay in the country because there's so much production there. They thought the potential rewards outweighed the risk. ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil, and other companies said, no, we're not going to take that risk. We don't believe PDVSA is really capable of operating all of these fields, and they were right about that. And so at that time, by then, production had fallen to slightly under 3 million barrels a day. And of course, since then, it's down below 1 million, as we see. As the company, unfortunately, PDVSA used to be a very robust, highly regarded national oil company. But of course, you've had all this outward migration, collapse of the education system in Venezuela because of the socialist government. And so you end up with a company that's really not capable of conducting these operations.
So you said ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, and the like didn't really, they didn't like the risk-reward proposition back then. How do they feel about it right now? Because the companies, American energy firms, they have yet to say if they want to return to Venezuela to rebuild or not. I mean, you said earlier, it's a big undertaking requiring significant investment. Do you think the companies are being cautious? Do they need more clarity before making big moves? How are they feeling?
Well, I have to believe, first of all, that we wouldn't have put the President of the United States in that press conference last Saturday to say the things he said unless advanced discussions had already been held with those companies, first of all. Second, big projects like this with multi-billion-dollar investments are in the DNA at ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, Chevron, and other big multinational companies. Look at what ExxonMobil has done in neighboring Guyana. They've invested $60 billion in their own capital 45% operating interest in that big offshore field. Now they've got it up producing almost 1 million barrels a day. This is what ExxonMobil does. Chevron is a minority owner in that very same project. This is what Chevron does. ConocoPhillips, same way. Shell, BP, all of these companies, these big projects with enormous potential rewards are what they do all over the world. So I don't think there's any reluctance for them to take on the projects. They have to get some assurance of stability of government going forward. And I think that's a big piece of what the Trump administration has been working to provide this week so far. And I believe that we come out of that meeting on Friday. I know there's a meeting between the president and CEOs of many of these companies. And I think after that meeting, we're going to see probably some messaging that says, yes, these companies are willing to go back in there under certain conditions, of course, and assurances from the U.S. government that they're going to do what they can to promote stability there in the region.
So Chevron is the major U.S. company in Venezuela still, as you talked about earlier as well. What is the situation with Chevron right now? How does this development impact the company? Does it stand to benefit?
Oh, sure. I think so, because even Chevron lost some of its leasehold back in 2007. You know, they didn't maintain everything they were already involved in down there. And so they stand to benefit from some restored access to additional acreage and projects. And these other companies, of course, they challenged the Chavez rewriting of the contracts that they had been operating under and won judgments in arbitration, international arbitration courts. So they stand also to benefit from the payment of the damages they sought in those arbitration cases as well. So, you know, it could be a pretty good windfall for those companies as well, although you have to wonder how the Venezuelan government is actually going to fund repayment of those debts. And we haven't seen those details yet from the administration.
Okay, David, just one final question. How do you think the U.S.'s move here is going to impact global energy prices?
It won't have any immediate impact. I think prices have softened just a little bit here this week, but not much. Because you're not going to really see major new volumes coming onto the market until at least 2027 at the earliest. Right now, we're not going to see any softening in prices directly attributable to this. But as those new volumes come online, you certainly could see that. And if they're really substantial volumes coming online, you know, in the nearer term, then of course it could be very significant. So we'll just have to wait and see how that develops. The global market on which oil prices are set is so complex. You know, I'm always really reluctant to try to predict anything beyond a week or so.
Okay, well, David, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate you talking to us today.
Thank you.
Nationwide protests in Iran enter the 11th day as demonstrators issue a direct appeal to President Trump. Human rights groups report dozens killed and mass arrests as unrest spreads. More news after this break.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now. With your gift of $19 a month, we'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
All throughout your home, appliances and systems just wait for the worst time to break down and leave you with expensive repairs. Unless you have a plan from Choice Home Warranty.
All home appliances and systems have a breakdown clock, and when it expires, it will cost hundreds and potentially even thousands of dollars to fix or replace. That's why every homeowner should have a plan with Choice Home Warranty, like I do. For a low monthly fee, a Choice Home Warranty plan will cover your heating, air conditioning, plumbing, appliances, and more. Don't let an unexpected repair wreck your budget. With Choice Home Warranty, that covered repair is fixed or replaced for you.
Choice Home Warranty has been a great company to work with, and they've taken care of us. I would suggest anybody who lives in a home not to be in a home without them.
Avoid the ticking clock of home appliances and systems breaking down with a plan from Choice Home Warranty. Call now to get your first month free. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage. That's $200 in total savings.
With a nationwide network of over 25,000 technicians, I don't worry about how my next breakdown will be handled. With a click of a button, my claim is filed, and Choice Home Warranty starts the clock. They do the legwork, hiring the right technician and handling the cost of covered repairs and replacements. And check this out. For a limited time, you can get 1 month of coverage free. Did you hear me? Free. You can't beat that deal with a sledgehammer. But hurry, this offer is ticking away. Once the clock hits zero, poof, it's gone.
Don't fear the breakdown clock. Get a plan from Choice Home Warranty and get round-the-clock money-saving protection you can count on. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage, plus get your first month free. This offer won't last long.
Get your home protected. Call now.
Don't wait for an appliance or system to break down. Call before that happens. Call 800-983-3523. 800-983-3523.
President Trump sending a message to the NATO alliance today. Trump says he made the alliance stronger, adding that the U.S. will always stand behind NATO. Trump emphasized that he got member nations to commit to spending 5% of their GDP on defense. According to the old agreement, member nations had to spend 2% on defense. Trump wrote, quote, "Everyone said that couldn't be done, but it could because beyond all else, they're all my friends." Trump added, quote, "We will always be there for NATO, even if they won't be there for us. The only nation that China and Russia fear and respect is the Donald J. Trump rebuilt USA." The message comes after Trump discussed expanding U.S. influence in Greenland in recent days, which has received backup, or rather pushback, from several NATO allies. Ukraine is seeking a clear answer from its partners on what their response would be in the case of a future Russian attack. This just 1 day after more than 30 countries, including the U.S., met in Paris to finalize security guarantees for Ukraine.
If there is aggression again, will all partners give a strong response to the Russians? I'm asking this very question to all our partners, and I haven't received a clear, unambiguous answer yet.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he sees that partners are willing to provide strong security guarantees, but he added that the guarantees have to be legally binding, supported by the nation's parliaments and the U.S. Congress. He also said the American side has been productive in achieving real results, but according to Zelensky, more is needed. He told reporters he hoped to meet President Trump soon, possibly in Washington, to discuss U.S. security guarantees. Iran is facing growing unrest as nationwide protests entered their 11th day, with demonstrators issuing a direct appeal to President Trump. Human rights groups report at least 36 people killed and more than 1,200 arrests. NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with the Persian Epoch Times about what makes these protests unique in comparison with past movements.
An opposition group says demonstrators have effectively taken control of two western cities, Abdanan and Malek Shahi, with crowds celebrating in the streets and chanting slogans against Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Protests and strikes have now spread to dozens of cities across the country. In Alam province, witnesses report tear gas was fired inside a hospital as authorities tried to arrest wounded protesters. Images circulating on social media show a woman holding a sign making a direct appeal to President Trump, saying, "Please don't let them kill us." President Trump earlier issued a warning to the regime.
We'll take a look. We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Persian Epoch Times publisher Shahrzad Ghaneh says the regime is listening.
Inside Iran, the leadership takes any direct threat from Donald Trump and his administration very seriously. Even if they publicly they show that they are dismissing it, but they remember that Trump has acted very unpredictably before.
Ghaneh says Trump's words signal to Iranians that Washington is paying attention.
This really matters to Iranian people, that they're feeling that this time they have this support from the U.S. administration. So for protesters, the message is offering a psychological reassurance to the people. And they're feeling they're not completely invisible.
Ghaneh says these protests are unique in several ways. One key difference is the participation of merchants in Tehran's historic Grand Bazaar, a group that has traditionally stayed out of political unrest.
Usually they wouldn't intervene much. They're considered one of the most conservative groups in Iran. And the bazaar is the biggest center for the trade in Iran.
Another major difference from past uprisings, she says, is growing public support for the exiled crown prince.
You can see it everywhere, especially among young Iranian people, that they're chanting his name.
The Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi, has said he is willing to lead a transition until a referendum is held. He speaks optimistically on Fox News.
In all these years, I've never seen an opportunity as we see today in Iran.
Ghaneh says signs of dissent are also emerging from within establishment circles.
A very interesting thing is happening is the hashtag saying Khamenei is not my leader. It's going viral.
She adds that Trump administration sanctions have deepened economic pressure on the regime.
They're not giving the money into the country like Biden and Obama administration. They were giving the Islamic Republic money.
Apart from basic needs like water, electric, and food, Ghaneh says Iranians want their dignity back.
They are peaceful people, and they know that Islamic Republic is not representing what type of people they are. You know, if you go, Iranian people are considered as very kind people. I would say kindest people in the world. Their hospitality is very famous among the tourists that go inside the Iran. But their image is not representing who they are, right? In the news. So making Iran great again, they want to give back all these things.
In recent days, the U.S. has transported 12 military aircraft to 2 bases in the U.K., leading to speculation about their possible deployment in the event of any Iran engagement. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The 2026 Consumer Electronics Show is underway in Las Vegas, with companies from around the world unveiling their latest technology. NTD's Christina Corona takes us to the Samsung show floor for a closer look at what's new.
We're here in the city of Las Vegas at CES 2026, where the latest tech is on display. From new gadgets to cutting-edge innovation, we'll be walking the show floor and showing you what stands out this year. At the Samsung show floor, we got a hands-on experience with the latest Samsung Galaxy Z Trifold.
This is a fully functioning phone on the outside with a 6.5-inch dynamic AMOLED display, but then when you want to take it to the next level, you don't just fold it once, you fold it twice, and now you have a 10-inch dynamic AMOLED 2X display on the inside.
He says multitasking is taken to a whole new level by allowing users to run several apps at once on the expanded screen.
Maybe I wanted to go ahead and do things like take notes, but then drag and drop photos into my notes. I can do that natively. You can actually run 3 different apps side by side on the inside display of this.
Samsung is also showcasing its newest AI-powered televisions for 2026, including an AI Soccer Mode Pro designed to enhance the viewing experience for soccer fans worldwide. Viewers can customize game audio by lowering crowd noise or boosting the commentary, getting information on individual players, and even pull up real-time stats and AI predictions on who's likely to win the match, all by just speaking to your TV. Samsung is also showing off a transparent micro LED screen, giving a glimpse at where screen technology is headed. Because the screen is brighter, more light passes through each pixel, making it clearer to see what's behind it. Samsung is also debuting an AI-powered beauty mirror that analyzes skin conditions like wrinkles and pigmentation, then offers personalized skincare recommendations. The mirror doubles as a smart display, blending beauty tech with next-generation screen technology. These products show how Samsung is blending everyday technology with smarter, more personalized experiences. Reporting from the Samsung show floor right next to the transparent micro LEDs, Christina Corona, NTD News, Las Vegas.
Meanwhile, scientists are studying how animals sleep. Researchers have been examining brain function in different species in an effort to determine how and why they get their rest. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
Humans need about 8 hours to get a good night's sleep. But what about animals? Birds, whales, and even jellyfish need sleep, but shut-eye makes them vulnerable to predators. Biologist Paul-Antoine Liberel explains.
We are sleeping in a safe place usually, and we forget, I think, about the risk of sleeping.
Liberel says learning about the ecology and evolution of sleep in different animals can reveal more details.
It's a mystery, but we have some cues about the function. But we don't know if the function are the same for all animals. We don't know if some animals can fulfill the benefit of sleep during a wake.
For example, penguins survive by taking thousands of naps a day. A single snooze averages just 4 seconds. Biologist Wan-Young Lee calls them microsleeps.
They seem to have very fragmented sleep because it could help them to defend their eggs or defend their chicks against the predators, against the skewers, and also they can defend their nest against other neighbors.
Animal sleep research specialist Niels Rattenberg explains how humans need enough sleep, especially for activities like driving. Other animals seem better adapted to little rest.
And I think that's one of the big mysteries that's emerging from these types of studies of animals in the wild, is how can these animals perform adaptively despite sleeping so little, when we suffer dramatically if we lose just a few hours of sleep.
A few other animals have similar sleeping abilities. Dolphins can sleep with 1/2 of the brain at a time while swimming. Scientists say some birds like swifts and albatrosses can even sleep while flying. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Homeland Security says a woman tried to attack ICE agents in Minnesota today, calling it an act of domestic terrorism. The agents fired shots in response. We have more on that story in the next hour.
According to ancient Chinese medicine, purslane is considered a medicinal herb and is used to help lower cholesterol, improve vascular functions, and prevent diabetes. Perilla seeds can nourish the lungs and spleen. It is used to treat asthma and improve pulmonary functions. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds from Hwangmae Mountain in South Korea. It contains over 90% of omega-3, 6, 7, and 9. The highest concentration possible without chemical additives. The soft gel is made of natural seaweed. It is 100% organic and vegan. Both adults and children can take it with peace of mind. Ancient recipes were passed down from heaven to bring prosperity and longevity. Puritang green vegetable omega-3.